So, some of us have relegated this idea of good news to either fire insurance or a ticket to heaven. We're here to tell you that it is so much bigger than that. So, let's talk about that.
Hi, welcome. We're glad you're with us. Each week we relearn, retell the good news of God's story and share what implications that's had in our lives and the lives of our spiritual community. So we're glad you've joined us for the conversation. My name's Sylvia.
And I'm Shane. We're glad you're here.
Yep.
So tell me about this week. Good week, bad week? What'd you think? How was your week?
Productive. Yep. Got lots done.
I would say mine was, I don't know about productive, but it was busy. It was definitely busy. So I saw, and I love talking about this, because I saw on Facebook that you have the next 6 months worth of eggs.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In how many chickens?
Two. Got two chickens. Yep, and they're being very faithful.
I don't understand.
Doing a good job.
I don't understand people that, why do you guys get farm animals when you live in the city?
Just to pretend.
My sister wants to get a horse, and I'm like, you're right in the middle of Denver. Why do you need a horse in the middle of Denver? You know what she said? It's not about need, Shane. It's about want.
It's about want.
That's a really, really big want, to be honest. Like, I can't imagine. Yep. So, hey, we are Facebook Live because, why are we doing Facebook Live again?
Not so that they can look at us, but so that hopefully we can have more of a conversation so that we can get your input into various things and hear what you have to say and share with you a little more directly.
Or read what you have to say, because sometimes it's a read. So in the posts, if you have some comments, if you have some questions, put them underneath, and we will try to address those on air or in the next episode, however we can make it happen.
And I want to give them something to think about right off the bat.
Go.
During the talk today, we're going to ask you to share, how do we know that God is sovereign? What have you seen?
I don't even know what that word means. That's a big word.
All powerful.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so go ahead and start thinking about that, and we'll let you know when we're ready to
we'll give you the cue.
We'll give you the cue.
What if we don't? We'll probably forget.
Put it in there right now.
Start writing now.
Yep.
So we are... we're really excited about this because a lot of what we've been talking about, as I mentioned in my teaser earlier this week, a lot of what we've been talking about these last, how long have we been doing this? 5 weeks? 5 weeks. Is beginning to kind of weave and tie into itself into a bigger picture of the gospel. Mm-hmm. You know, there are so many times maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't want to assume what your journey has been, but I know for myself that there's been several times where this idea of gospel was, something that happened 2,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. This guy named Jesus came, died for my sins, made it all right for me to go back to heaven and be with God, and that's it. That's the end of the gospel. Yeah. Boom. That's gospel. And now, so you get that information, you believe it, you whatever your faith tradition might be, you get baptized, you do whatever, and then you move on to something else. And one of the really cool things that we've been learning in our spiritual community is that actually the gospel is so much bigger than that. And to relegate it into a certain time in history or in a certain place, slot in your beliefs, really does it disservice. And it robs us of some great things that it can do. So speaking of great, so we're going to talk about these 4 G's, what we've come to know as 4 G's of God. Mm-hmm. And it's just 4 attributes. There's so many more, but 4 of these encompass a really huge area, I don't even know how to say it, in our life that we struggle with. I'm just going to blah.
I would say, there are 4 very common areas of struggle and that apply to so much of life.
And so many people, like we all as human beings struggle with these areas, but there are 4 truths about God that speak into those areas that give us, so much freedom and grace and just some amazing things. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to start with, what's the first one?
God.
as in someone of authority, someone who has
in ultimate charge.
yes, in charge, ultimately in
Yeah.
control,
Yep.
basically, of these areas. So,
Yeah.
okay,
All right.
got that.
So, wow, we're jumping right to this.
we're just gonna jump right in.
Because now this is where we need you to share. What have you?
Oh, you give them the cue.
What have you studied? What have you experienced? What have you learned about God that would tell you that, yeah, He is great. He is in control. Because when life gets tough, if your belief doesn't have any backbone to it, it's going to fly out the window and you aren't going to be able to get it back.
Yeah.
So,
it'll just crumble under the pressure.
yeah. So how do we know? What are some of the things?
Well, let's talk about Scripture, because the Bible is full of examples where it talks about how great God is, and it gives these reasons. How do we know that God is great? I'm just going to touch on, there's a ton of Psalms in here that talk about that. I love Psalms 104, how it talks about that, and to give this, he paints this picture, and remember, this is poetry, so when you read it, if you try to read it literally, you're going to be like, that's really kind of weird and stupid, because we know better than that. But that wasn't the point. This was basically a love song that the author was writing about God. So just like I gave my wife the love song, I would walk 500 miles. There's no way in the world I'm going to walk 1,000 miles to get to my wife. The reality is I'd drive, I'd fly, I would not be walking 500 miles, then 500 more just to be with her.
But
I'd find another way.
it.
But
Yeah.
I'd say that because those are cool words to say. It gives this idea. So I love this idea that as he's writing the song, he talks about God who wraps himself up with light. As you mentioned, you have this picture of God just taking this giant sunbeam and kind of wrapping himself up. It talks about a God who stretched out the heavens like a tent. Those of us that have been camping know what that's like, but we're talking, he's doing
So
the heavens.
massive.
He's like this huge, massive thing. God's got that. Talks about how he's made the clouds his chariot and he rides on the wind, how he set the earth in foundations, and we know that it's just hanging in space, but it's so solid right there that it's as if God just set it right there. How he covered the deep with water, how he stood above the mountains, how he takes care of the animals. So many things of this God, how he's in control of all this, from the little teeny animals that live in the shrub, to the cattle, to the bigger animals. All of these, the wild and the domestic, all of these animals have been taken care of. God is in control, not just of creating these things, of these animals, but he's also in control of the sun and the moon and the seasons. The things that would cause us to fear, the vicious animals, the lions and whatnot. He talks about, how they come to God. They come to God for what they need, and he provides them for that. It's just this really cool picture of all the things that God can do and is in control of. So I really like how David, the author, talks about that. What about you? What you got?
Well, just listening to you tell about that brought a whole bunch of other things to mind. But I like in Job how God says, Job's life is not going well. Definitely, if anything looked like it was out of control, Job's life was out of control.
Yeah.
And Job was fretting and worried, and God came for a conversation and was like, so where were you? I hung the stars and I laid the foundations of the earth. Where were you that day? What were you doing? It's like, I know you're all wrapped up in this, but I've been around for a really long time. Here's some of the things I've done. I think I can handle this.
Yeah.
Because to Job, it was everything he had owned, everything he had loved and cared for was gone, and God was like, I've got this. I've been here a while.
Even in the middle of your pain, I still have it. So
I've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I as I mentioned before, when you told me that story, I love that the voice and the inflection that you bring to that, rather than God, looking down on him. He's coming to Job as a friend. And it's more of a softer tone, a playful tone. He's not reprimanding this guy who lost
Already
all his kids, lost all his livestock, lost all everything that he had except maybe his, he even lost his health. He still had his wife, but God's not going to jump all over that and reprimand him for, you should think better of me, even though you've lost all of this stuff.
Yeah.
No, he comes a little more playful and just inviting him into, hey, look at the bigger picture. Because you may not see it.
You're kind of caught in this spot.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's pretty awesome. That's a pretty awesome picture. So what else do we have? What are other things that express how great God is? Some other things that we can know, how we can know that God is great, that He is in control, that He has these things.
Well, we have creation where He's just speaking, which I think we have heard that story so many times that we just kind of say it and don't even imagine what that would be like. But something that is easier for us to imagine perhaps is being outside on a super windy day, whether you're in a boat or not. We don't have any
Those of us in Nebraska know what that's like. Yep. Yeah.
So
that's every day.
But say that you are have your hands full and you have a hat on your head and you're outside in the wind, and just that feeling of, I'm going to lose it. That hat's going to be in the next state pretty soon. But just to know that, man, in that moment, Jesus could say, be still and quiet, just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's power.
And you're getting that idea from the story of him being in the boat.
From the story of him in the boat, which,
with all the fishermen who were freaking out, and he was
sleeping while they were freaking out because he was at rest, knowing that, hey, my Father's got this.
Yeah.
That's the kind of peace that he was able to have, trusting that his Father was in control.
Yeah. And speaking of speaking of Jesus, let's go with that. That the Jesus story is probably, in my mind, one of the biggest stories that express how in control God is. Because if there was ever a story that seemed from the very beginning ultimately out of control, it would be His story. Born of a virgin, born as a baby, God coming down as a baby, having all of these things going against Him, and growing up in that time and everything that happened, ultimately giving up complete control, or what seemed like complete control, when He was arrested, taken into custody. He's beaten. He's falsely accused. There's no getting out of this. There's no way you would think that this is a controlled situation, and yet God from the outside, it's still. There's no way that would be like, oh yeah.
Oh, that's the plan.
Yeah, no, totally. So the whole Jesus story shows, how ultimately and amazingly that God is in control.
Yeah.
Even though He died and it was like, okay, I guess really God, and He's like, no, I got this still.
Yeah.
I still got this.
Yeah. And I like to think of the life of Saul, aka Paul.
Okay.
And just that God was in control in a way that He knew how to speak a language that Saul could hear.
Yeah.
Because Saul really thought that he was doing God's bidding by persecuting the Christians. And he totally was following God as he knew it. And God is powerful enough to know, how can I reach this guy and let him know that, hey, that is not my plan. You are kicking against the goats.
I don't know what
whatever
means.
that means.
I don't know what that means, but it's I use it with my kids all the time.
Yeah. But just for him to know, I know how to reach this guy.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. That is in control. Not that he made Saul be different, but that he was in control of the situation to know, hey, I can reach this guy.
Yeah.
I know how. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So here's the point of what we're trying to do with all of these, it starts with, the first sentence starts with God is, and in this case we're using God is great. And then there is an application, I guess, of that. I don't know if that's a better word. So what's the application of God is great? Well, so I don't have to be in control.
What are you talking about?
Exactly. What am I talking? I have no idea. I'm out of control right now. Because as humans, we have this really, it's an unfortunate and
it's I think a natural inclination to try to be in control.
To try to be in control.
As soon as we figure out we're an independent being from our mothers, we want to be in charge.
Yeah. And so,
and
but the reality is that we're
not
really seconds away from not being in control.
Right.
Like I can be driving down the road, I feel like I'm in complete control, and suddenly something else happens, whether a ball comes in the road, whether a squirrel runs in front, whether a car comes from the side, I'm suddenly in nanoseconds out of control.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think our life goes, but we're under this delusion that we're in control. And so the interesting thing with that is, the question, so how's that working for you when you think you're in control?
When we are actively trying to control, it creates a lot of stress. It creates, sometimes it creates some naivety, thinking that we actually are. But when we recognize that, hey, I'm not, but I have to be, just that internal feeling that this is something I have to do. I can't stand to not be in control. It creates a lot of anxiety and stress and
fear. Frustration.
It creates a lot of relational problems, where you're trying to control other people and controlling,
worry, envy, all of those things. As we're naming these off, have you ever found yourself feeling these things, whether it be fear or worry or frustration or bitterness or envy, anger, anxiety, those kind of things? Most of us, I'm hoping you can all say that you've
that you can recognize that.
Yeah, that you can recognize.
Because for sure you have had it.
That's right.
Hopefully you can recognize
That's right.
it.
So a couple weeks back we talked about the thing behind the thing, and this is where that concept really comes in. So if we have those, and in this case we're going to talk about control. If we have those feelings, what's the thing behind the thing? What's the thing behind that worry? What's the thing behind that anxiety and that fear and that frustration? And it might not take very long for us to realize, well, I'm feeling this way because I feel like I should be in control, but I'm not. I feel like I'm in control, but actually the reality is I'm out of control. I don't have this control.
So if you think you should be in control, then what are you believing about God?
Yeah, exactly. So that even takes it another layer. So what's the thing behind the thing? Well, I feel like I'm supposed to be in control. I'm not. Well, if I feel that way, then behind that is, well, I guess I don't feel like God is in control.
I don't think he has that ability.
Yeah, I don't think he's got this.
I don't think he cares. I don't think there's a lot of disbelief that goes beyond those things.
So many things that are involved in that.
And something that you mentioned on the little teaser was that we are all unbelievers. And there are, I was telling you earlier, there were probably 100 times today where I was an unbeliever and haven't recognized it because God hasn't brought that to my awareness. But I am fully aware of many times when I step back and I go, wow, I did not believe that God could manage that. And so I had to manage it. I felt I had to manage it. So belief is a growth process.
And it goes back and forth,
yes.
I think, as well. And I love that question you asked because we have come to ask that question a lot in our spiritual community. Due to just the nature of our relationships, we have the freedom to be able to do that, to speak into each other's lives and ask that question, what are you believing about God, or what are you not believing about God right now? as I'm listening to you express these things, it's not that I want to downplay those, but let's move into,
what's behind it.
What's behind it? Yeah. Where's the unbelief? And how can we move past that? How can we remind ourselves of, well, I really don't believe that? And I think we'll probably in a future episode talk more deeply about this process that we're talking about. But for tonight, just with God is great, so I don't have to be in control. It's that idea of, okay, when I find myself in these places where I feel like I'm in control, but I'm really not in control, where I feel like I have this worry and this fear, these things that are freaking out. An example for me, when I was working sales, and the idea that my income is based on commission. So if I don't make sales, then I don't get paid. If I don't get paid, I don't pay my bills. If I don't pay my bills, my kids are going to end up, in a street corner, or probably I'm going to have to sell them into slavery.
Probably.
There's so many things they're going to go to, I don't know. I mean,
we'll have nothing to eat.
We'll have nothing to eat, and we'll just end up, in the sewer. Who knows what?
Taking the bike to work because you lost your car.
So many things are going on that chain and train just kind of rolls out. But that is the illusion that I'm in control of this. And in that moment where I'm beginning to worry and fear, and the more I fear, the harder it is to make sales. I don't know if that's other people's experience, but I really start focusing on that. Man, I really got to get it. I got to get it, and it feels like I'm going nowhere, and that just kind of builds into that anxiety. But if I can stop for a minute and go, okay, I'm really worried, I'm really freaking out. Why am I really freaking out? Because I believe that I'm in control of my income. Well, actually, I'm not. Maybe, and we'll talk about this here in a second.
Yeah.
I'm responsible, but I'm not in control of the outcome because God is in control.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, well, if you're not in control of your income, then why go to work?
Yeah. Yeah.
If God is the one that's going to be in control, then maybe I don't have to do anything at all.
Yeah. So we want to point out that God is great, so I don't have to be in control, but that doesn't mean that I don't have responsibilities. I mean, there is some kind of laws of nature that God put into place that.
So then what does it mean to not be in control?
Yeah. What is that going to look like? What's for you? Tell me what that looks like.
For me, that looks like I'm not trying to make the outcome go in a particular direction. I don't have to make it work out so that this happens. I still will be making decisions, doing things, interacting, but I'm not trying to force a particular outcome. I'm letting that be up to God.
And then also not just trying to control an outcome, but sometimes we try to control people.
Yeah.
We try to control, those of us that are parents try to control our kids.
No idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, none at all. None at all. We want to control their behavior. We want to control the outcome of their lives. Now that doesn't mean that I'm not responsible to help
to directing
them into becoming good citizens, good adults, not just good kids.
So I wanted to bring up the law of sowing and reaping.
I don't want to talk about it because I don't sow very well at all. That was the one class I failed.
So that's a way to say that, if you plant corn, you're going to get, and if you maintain it, you're going to get corn. So there are laws that make this world tick. And a big category is the law of sowing and reaping. If you work hard, you'll have an income. If you take care of your toys, you'll have them to play with again next year.
True. Yeah.
There are certain laws that if you want to be a friend or have a friend, be a friend. That's kind of a law of sowing and reaping. I'm going to be kind and I will get kindness back.
Yeah.
And sometimes we like to put that onto God, but God is set up just the way that things work.
Yeah.
And He's still, if you decide, well, I'm not going to go sow and I expect to reap, that's just not how life goes. So you have to carry on some responsibility. But
Okay.
that ultimate, how is it going to turn out while I'm being responsible?
Yeah.
I don't have a guarantee, and it's not up to me to make it work in a particular way.
So if I'm a student and I want a good grade in this class because I need this class to get a degree, whatever it is, I should study and not expect the A just to come to me. But
What?
I know,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right? But
Right.
what if I do my best and I end up getting, a D or an F? Then I feel like I shouldn't have to really worry about this because ultimately God is still in control. Now I may have to take this again. I
You
may
might.
learn a little bit more.
You might, or perhaps
It's really
it's
not
not
that
your
big of a
thing.
deal. Yeah, or it's not my thing.
and you're trying to force life because you feel like you have to have a particular something,
Yep.
and it wasn't the way God made you to begin with. So
Could be. So I'm
Lots of
both
things.
I'm both responsible and
Yes.
trying to do my best,
yes,
but also leaving the outcome ultimately up to
Open.
God.
yes,
And that outcome is bigger than just a letter on the paper.
Yes.
Bigger than the grade. That outcome
For
that I'm
sure.
leaving up to God is, okay, so I got an F here, but I'm doing well in the class, so I'm going to continue forward. Or maybe this tells me this really isn't my forte and maybe I could do something better.
Do you realize we're talking about the gospel,
Yeah.
and we're talking about a class in school?
Mm-hmm.
So that's reaching into all of life. We're talking about the
Yeah,
gospel.
talking about how we
We're
raise
talking
our
about how
kids.
we raise our kids.
Talking about how to do
Yeah.
work. How,
Right.
yeah. I mean, it goes so much bigger. Again, this goes so much bigger
Yeah.
than just fire insurance or a
Right.
ticket to heaven.
Right.
And we've only just kind of started this whole thing.
I know.
So, I mean, I'm really excited about this. Hey, any of you got any questions as we're getting ready to wrap up here? We would love to answer any questions that you have in regard to this topic. One of the things that we haven't yet talked about is how do we live this? Okay, so this is a great idea. This is a great tool to think about, okay, God is great, so I don't have to be in control. So I can, not... How
It
can
is a
I
tool.
not do these other things that we talk about, fear and frustration and worry? And do I just will that? So I know this, so I just got to think hard. Do I have to write it on a piece of paper 1,000 times? How does it work?
Slowly.
Oh, that's not what I wanted to hear.
It works slowly. It works. We've been doing this for 3 years,
Yeah.
and there are still times where someone else says it to me rather than me going, oh yeah, I'm kind of going down, my brain is going down the path here, and
Yeah.
I'm not allowing what I know to be true about God to influence my life in this situation. And yeah, it's a slow process because you're retraining, challenging your own self and
Yeah.
those whom you have permission to speak into their lives.
Yeah. And that retraining means, I'm trying to be aware of this and I'm doing this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm reminding myself of these truths. And we still have these things on our wall. Some of us have written them on little sticky notes and put them all over our mirrors or our house or our car. And because this is important,
Right.
to know this, to remember this. I can know this, but to remember this and to allow it to sink in.
Exactly.
And-
Allow it to have an impact.
Yeah, because how many of us, by show of hands, raise your hand, how many of us enjoy worrying?
I didn't see any hands.
I didn't see any hands either, but I'm sure someone out there, they may not enjoy it, but they're an expert at it.
Yes.
It's the only thing I'm
Aren't
good
we
at
all?
right now is worrying. How
Yeah.
many of us enjoy frustration or enjoy anger or envy or fear? Do we really enjoy those things in life that kind of tie us up in knots and suck the life out of us? We don't.
No.
But this idea, just the start of it here, could be, an opportunity to move from that. And so one of the things we call that, actually, it's called repentance. To repent means to think differently, to turn from these particular thoughts that you mentioned. Your brain's going down a certain way.
Yeah.
So let me repent of that. Repentance is not meaning I have to beat myself up with the Bible, or I have to, crawl on my knees, and say 100 Hail Marys. Repentance is simply, I'm going to stop thinking this way, and I'm going to choose to believe God is who he says he is.
And there is a choice involved in that.
Yeah.
It's a purposeful decision.
Yep.
To say, no, I may feel 100% the other way, but I'm not going to trust what I feel about that, and instead I'm going to believe what God has said that he is. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of what helps us with that is we have a community.
Every week we say it.
That we remind each other, and we help each other with this and walk through this. And as you mentioned, we have permission to be able to do that. We don't just jump into someone's business. You're not believing this about God right now. We have grown and asked, and
you have permission because of the investment we've made in each other's lives.
Yeah. So
yep.
Great stuff. At least we think it is. We hope it has been for you. Tell me your so what, who cares? Because I can't come up with one.
Okay, so it gives a lot of space and freedom. You don't have to. I don't have to spend so much brain time on outcomes.
Yeah.
And so it allows me more space to just focus on the here and now. What do I want to do and be, and leave the how it turns out up to God.
Yeah, that's cool. So my so what, who cares, is the idea that this good news about God's story is not relegated to just a slot in a belief system.
Yeah.
But this good news about God's story is overarching in so many other areas, in all areas, really. It should be in all areas of my life. So it has power that the Bible talks about in the New Testament. All these New Testament authors talk about the power of this good news. And until I move it from a slot in a belief system and allow it to spread, or a historical fact, and allow it to spread and kind of seep and kind of saturate, the rest of my life, then, that's really nice. That's over there. But right now, God, I need to deal with this. And right now, that is my grades. It is my kids. It is my job. It is all of these things. I got this. I'm glad you did that. Thank you for taking care of that. But I need to take care of this right now.
And as you're saying this, I'm thinking, and that is what allows the fruit of the Spirit to live out in your life.
Okay.
It's by allowing God to have the power that he says he does.
Yeah.
Allows you to live out a more peace-filled, hope beyond understanding for those around you. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It's big.
That's pretty awesome. Okay, so talk to us about the resource here. Last thing.
Okay, last thing, resource. So we have mentioned the 4 Gs. We have talked about the Gospel Primer off and on throughout
so many
the last few weeks.
things. This is a rich book, and thank you, Caesar Kalinowski. Let me see you spell that. For putting this together. But tell us how, what is with this?
So this is it says an 8-week guide to transformation in community. And we spent much more than 8 weeks.
Yes, we did.
Going through it.
Yes, it has taken much longer. That's a lie on the front, but or misleading. It's misleading.
There are 8 studies, and they each have, I guess, just 6 because they take a rest day.
Yeah.
So there are 6 different days for each one, and packed full of life-changing concepts about the gospel.
And it's all practical. And even though she said packed, don't think of that as a lot of words to read. It is
just
not,
a lot of concepts.
It's a lot of concepts and a lot of really
how do you
great,
apply it?
rich, how I was thinking of this on the way here. you have a dessert, and when you say it's a rich dessert, usually those rich desserts come in these little teeny pieces because there's so much
much to
packed
it.
into just a little bit that so that's what that book is like. You can find
Yep.
it. Let's see, we found it on Amazon. Missio Publishing has it as well. And if you know how to spell Caesar Kalinowski, you can look up on his website. I'm sure he's selling it as well. But
And I would say try and find a small community that you can do it together with.
it is transformational as a group because that's what it's intended to be. It's intended to be a group study. So it's pretty fantastic.
And
so it is,
Ryan put it in the comments.
And it is in the comments already. So if you need to, you can click that link. Okay, so we're going to continue this next week with the next G, which is, do you know what it is?
Are you serious?
Like you don't even, you could make it up. It doesn't even matter.
So,
it's in 5. Here we go. Ready?
Hey,
Uh-huh.
But you're not going to be here next week.
Oh, no, I'm not going to be here. We will have
So your
a
lovely
guest.
wife.
Yes. As far as we know right now, my lovely wife will be our guest co-host. So it's
God is glorious.
That's right. That's right. God is glorious. It's going to be a good one.
Yep.
Next Friday night, 7 o'clock Central Time. And what I wanted also to remind you, and I'll do it again later, if you haven't yet, we would love for you to subscribe or to follow. That's the word. To follow our Facebook page so that you know when we post stuff and whatnot. I noticed that there's a whole bunch of likes, but not a lot of follows. So if you want to hit follow, you'll know exactly when we're going to be coming on, when we post stuff, all that kind of stuff. We're trying to create this as a resource for you to kind of lift you up and to let this bigger gospel splash all over you. So thanks so much for your time. Have a great evening.